So this is the bottom of the Dalit Amud Beis. The Gemara spoke about four lines up. The people in Chutz that they have 2 days Shmini Atzeres when they start Mashiv Ruach Amor Geshem. So what do they do on the second day Shmini Atzeres? It's 2 days in a row Shmini Atzeres. What do you do? So first Rav said you just say by Musaf, and then you do start again Musaf the next day. Shmuel said once you made it Musaf, you have to do Mincha also. So you said do Musaf and Mincha, and that's where we left off. And then the next, top of the next page, Daf Hey and Aleph. Rav Amar, we didn't read it yesterday, so I'll read it now. And that's what we do. I mean, people in Chutz do nowadays. That they start Shmini Atzeres on the first day, and then they continue, even though the night of Simchas Torah might be the night of Shmini Atzeres, and they weren't supposed to say Shmini Mashav Ruach, they continue. Once you start on the first day of Shmini Atzeres by Musaf, you don't stop anymore. So too Rav Sheshes, Rav Sheshes. Rav himself also retracted before. He said you only say Musaf, and then you go back without Mashiv Ruach until the next day Musaf. He also retracted. Rav himself was quoted as saying, the Gemara seems to just want to tell you that when you want to know which day Shmon Esrei, you count, it's Shmini Atzeres, you count from the first day of Rosh Hashanah. Just like when you have Yom Kippur, you don't make 2 Yom Kippurs. So when you count Yom Kippur, 10 days from Rosh Hashanah, the first day of Rosh Hashanah. So to keep on counting until you get to the 21st. That's going to be Hoshana Rabbah. And then you start saying on Shmini Atzeres, Mashiv Ruach Amor Geshem, U'maschil, V'chemishis, so Rav himself also said, once you started, you don't stop. That's how we pass, like everybody says now, Rav Sheshes, even Rav, Chemishis, Posek. So that's the halacha, and we just mentioned yesterday that our Gemara came out not like we do. The Gemara came out, there's no difference between Mashiv Ruach Amor Geshem and we're saying Talmud Motor. Machlokas, if it starts right away by Shmini Atzeres, so it starts on Zayin Cheshvan, and it depends where you live, whether it's Israel, Bavel, during the Beis HaMikdash, all those chilukim. But just to say that Allah is not like that. We don't pass it like our Gemara. I didn't find out yet what we do, where we do get it from. I'm sure the Rishon talk about it, but I didn't get clarity yet. But we don't do like the Gemara. We do that like the Pashup Shah in the Mishnah is that Mashiv Ruach Amor Geshem starts Shmini Atzeres and by Musaf, like the third Shita of Yehuda, and we don't say the same Talmud Motor until later on. And in Eretz Yisrael to do Zayin Cheshvan, as we're going to see, because the Gemara says you needed 2 weeks to get back because of the Holy Regel, and we'll see more about that. And in Bavel, we're going to see that they don't do also Zayin Cheshvan, they do even later from December 4th, which is going to be a sugya later on. So we continue the Mishnah, if that's good. And Masay Shol and Sakashamim, which again the Pashup Shat means Sheila for Saint Talmud Motor, a new sugya. And it talks about till when do you say Saint Talmud Motor? And now we're talking about the end of the year, by Pesach, by ending the season, the raining season. So here it talks about till when. The first Mishnah said that you do it until the first day of Pesach. By Musaf, you stop saying stop saying Mashiv Ruach Amor Geshem. And now it talks about Sheila when you stop saying Saint Talmud Motor, which again the Mishnah on Daf Yud is going to say when do you start saying Saint Talmud Motor, and now it tells you here first in Daf Hey, the order of the Mishnah goes when do you stop saying Saint Talmud Motor, and we would separate the 2 sugyas of the first Mishnah and over here. There is Mashiv Ruach Amor Geshem that it stops on the first day of Pesach, and obviously you're going to stop also the Saint Talmud Motor. This Mishnah goes on that you still say Saint Talmud Motor, and that's what the Gemara said yesterday, that this Mishnah says you say Saint Talmud Motor until after Pesach, till after Nisan. It would hold that Mashiv Ruach Amor Geshem also will continue until after Pesach or after Nisan. So again, this Mishnah says till when do you say Saint Talmud Motor? And for the Gemara's purposes, also Mashiv Ruach Amor Geshem. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ad Shavra Pesach till after Pesach. So the whole Pesach, you're still saying Saint Talmud Motor during Chol HaMoed, and as the Gemara explained, also Mashiv Ruach Amor Geshem. Unlike the Mishnah before that said you stop by the first day of Pesach. Rabbi Meir says even further, ad Sheitzi Nisan till after Nisan. The whole Nisan you say Saint Talmud Motor, Mashiv Ruach Amor Geshem. Shenemar Vayored Lochem Geshem. Yorel Malkush Rishon. Hashem brought down for you rain. Yorel Malkush, which are 2 kinds of rain, which the Gemara is going to talk about, but we're shown in the first month. So here, Meir says, you see, it rains in the first month. It rains in Nisan. So that was his source to say that rain is appropriate in the whole month of Nisan. You don't stop saying Saint Talmud Motor until after Nisan is over. Till Nisan is over. You ain't saying Nisan. The whole Gemara is not going to discuss the Mishnah. The Gemara now we're going to do today is not going to discuss the Mishnah at all. It just is going to start with the pasuk that the Gemara brought. And that's going to be what is it called? A board, a springboard. Thank you. A springboard for an whole Agadata for today. Today's all Agadata. And the Gemara starts. First on the pasuk that we just brought, the pasuk in Yoel. So over there, the pasuk over there is talking about there was a big locust, like it says in Yoel, there's a big locust. Agav, it doesn't say the timeline. It doesn't say when Yoel lived. It just says Divrei Yoel ben Psuel. It starts the whole story. There was a big locust, and then
a big swarm, a big plague.
A plague of locusts. And then it says Hashem made a miracle, and they had food to make up for all of that locust. The way the pasuk says, Hashem brought down for you rain, Yoel Malkosh in the first month. So the Gemara starts with that pasuk. Amalei of Nachman Rav Yitzchak. Just to point out, Rav Nachman is asking Rav Yitzchak because that's going to be like the main theme of the whole daf. Rav Nachman asked Rav Yitzchak, Yoreh ben Nisan. Yoreh is in the month of Nisan. Yoreh is the first rain. Yoreh is the first rain that comes in Cheshvan. The Tanya, we learned in the Brisa later on in our Gemara. Yoreh ben Cheshvan, Malkush ben Nisan. Yoreh is the first rain. Malkush is the late rain. The first rain is in Cheshvan, the beginning of the season. And Malkush is the late rain in Nisan after the whole season is over. So what does it mean that Hashem made rain, Yoreh and Malkush were Rishon in the first month? There's no Yoreh. Yoreh doesn't come the first month in Nisan. It comes in Cheshvan. Amalei, so Rabbi Yitzchak answered to Rav Nachman, Rabbi Yochanan, just to point out that Rabbi Yitzchak was a Talmud of Rabbi Yochanan, and the whole Gemara is always going to be quoting Rabbi Yochanan. Bimei Yoel ben Pesuel, the Sky Mikra said. This pasuk happened in the times of Yoel. His name is Yoel ben Pesuel, and that's what it says over there in the beginning of the Navi Yoel. And it's not a chiddush to say that that's pasuk is talking about Yoel. That's a pasuk in Yoel over there. But this is when over there it happened. That in that Kufa, it did happen that the Yoel came in Nisan. The Chsiv Bey over there it says in Yoel, top line. Yes, there are different kinds of locusts over there, and it says whatever was left over of one kind of locust, the next locust stayed up. And the translators, the Mepharshim say different possibilities, what is goes on, what is arba, like different kinds of locusts. But anyway, everything was eaten up. And also the Gemara says, besides there was a locust plague, there also was a drought. There was no rain. Also, that year, Adar passed. The whole Adar was over already. Cheshvan, Kislev, Teve, Shvat, Adar. 5 months into the season, it still didn't rain. It rained for the first time. So the Navi told Am Yisrael, the Yoel, I guess, he told Am Yisrael, go and plant. You have some tvua, plant it, because Hashem is going to make that as you grow. So he said, it's already holding Rosh Chodesh Nisan, it's not going to grow. Rashi is a little different, but not that it's not going to grow, but even if it's going to grow, I'm not going to live to see it growing. It takes time for things to grow. And I only have a little bit chitim. I don't have enough chitim to get me living, to sustain me until after it's going to grow. So if somebody has a kav, some kind of a measurement, the kav is the volume of 24 eggs. He has a bag of chitim, or he has two kavim of sorim. What should he do? Should he eat it and live? That's one choice. Or he should plant it. If he plants it, he's not going to have what to eat. So even if it's going to, Rashi says, even if it's going to grow, I'm not going to live to see it growing. The Nabi said, plant it. When the miracle happened, Rashi says the miracle was in order to sustain them because the Taka planted everything that they had. They didn't have so much to plant. They didn't have extra to plant and also to eat. So they planted whatever they had. That's an amazing feat of listening to the Navi. They had the last bag.
I'm saying, what was he saying? To plant?
Could be.
No, I'm trying to figure it out.
Okay. Or the fact that it rained, Hashem made a miracle that it rained in the first of Nisan, but or that it was in the Nebuah that Hashem said he should do that. So a miracle happened, and they found more. They found more chitim to eat. Rashi says this is what they ate. That they found in the walls. They found chitim. Rashi says that's what the mice were hiding. The mice were hiding chitim in the walls, and they found that. Or Masha Bechar and the Mulim, the anthills they found over there, and they had what to eat. And they also planted. It sounds like they planted first, and then they found. Looks maybe that's a shot. At first they showed their emunah that the Navi said, they listened to the Navi that trust in Hashem, and then Hashem made they should find in the walls, and they found in the anthills. They planted in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of Nisan. Then it rained the second time on the 5th of Nisan, and it grew in the next 11 days. And they were able to already bring the Korban Omer on the 16th of Nisan. Meanwhile, it started growing on the 5th of Nisan, it grew by the 16th. Nim says, Tvuah Gdela b'shisha chadashim Gdela b'achadas hayom. Nimsa Omer Kar b'Tvuah shel shisha chadashim Kar b'Tvuah shel achadas hayom. It came out that Tvuah, which usually grows in 6 months, Cheshvan, Kislev, Teves, Shabbat, Adar, Nisan, usually it takes 6 months. Now it grew in 11 days. And the Omer, which is the Korban Omer that you bring on the 16th of Nisan from barley, usually it grows also in 6 months. And again, it was able to be brought on 11 days. big miracle. So this was the place where it says that the Yorah came in the first month. It is interesting that Rav Meir in the Mishnah, he does learn out from this pasuk that it's still the rain season, and that's why every year he says you should say the same Talmud the whole Nisan, even though there was a big miracle that it rained and it grew so fast. But over there it's talking about that it rained the first time in Nisan, and he's saying that you do see enough that it's still called the raining season, and if it rained, even if it rained earlier, you still say the same Talmud until the end of Nisan. We don't pass like that, but that's what Meir said in the Mishnah. About that generation, the pasuk is referring to when it says those people who plant with tears, they're gonna harvest with happiness. Now, the pasuk shot.
That's about the Gudor of Yoel.
Yes, because they were planting with tears. Why? Because they were giving away their last food. Usually, you could say the pasuk shot is when a person is sowing, he's planting his seeds. He doesn't know what's going to happen. He says takes good seeds that are edible, and he puts them into the ground, and he hopes that the Avos Hashem is going to grow, and he should have a big income. But here the Gemara is saying that was extreme. They were crying because this was their last food, and they were definitely hoping that the nace is going to happen. That they should, it should be first of all they should live to see it grow, and that it should grow. That was a Zohar B'dimah B'rini Yitzharu. The Gemara darshans the pasuk more than we said till now. My up top line on the screen. My holoch yelech uvacha onosem meshach hazara. So Rashi says that the pasuk is redundant, which is the pasuk pshat is redundant. It says in short, hazar b'dimah b'rini yiktzoru, that those people who are going to plant, the people plant with tears and they harvest with joy. But then it says again, it spells it out. Holoch yelech uvacha onosem meshach hazara. When he's carrying the meshach hazara, the meshach hazara is some kind of a bag that you plant with. Like you have a bag with a hole in it. Nowadays they have a more complicated system of planting, but also the same idea. You have some kind of a machine that spits out the seeds. So that's called the meshach hazara. So when he's doing that, he's crying when he's planting the seeds. And then but he's going to come back carrying the stalks, the bundles of tuah. He comes back with joy. So the pasuk seems to repeat at length the short pasuk. Then it says again, that's the Hazar B'dimah. And then is explaining but it's repetitious. So that's the Gemara's question. Why is it repeated itself? Why does it repeat itself? Rabbi Yehuda, the answer is going to be that the shore also, not only did they have an income that the Tvuah grew, but also on the way back, when the shore was plowing, when he just turned around and went back, he also already had the fruits of his labor, that things were growing already. When the ox was plowing, he was crying, working hard. On the way back, he already was able to eat the chaziz. Rashi says chaziz is the shachas. That's the plant part of the tevuah, not the actual grain. The shor doesn't eat the grain, but he does eat the plant, the shachas. So that already was eaten on the way back. So that's the extra step. The first thing the pasuk says is that they planted their last tevuah and they were able to eat big bundles. Tell them is a furrow. And then it says that another point was the ox was able to already eat on the return trip. He already was able to eat from the shachas that started growing a few minutes after he plowed. That's talking about the pasuk. That's the ox. That's all about the ox. The ox was the one who planted, and the way back he already was barina. And then the pasuk says no sialamosav, no sialamosav, an extra pasuk. The ox is not no sialamosav. The ox, we're not talking about carrying back the bundles of tuah. He's just eating up the shachas on the way back. But no sialamosav is another bracha. We learned in the brayso, kana zeres shibola zertayim. The kana on the stalk of wheat, the kana is the part of the stalk that doesn't have anything growing on it. It's just a stalk. That's just the stem. And the shibolis is the top of it where you have all the tevuah growing. So usually Rashi says that the kana is much bigger proportionally to the part of the shibolis. The kana, the long stick, is empty, and then the part of it on top of it that has the shibolis with tevuah. But over here was the opposite. Here the shibolis was double the size of the kana. The kana was 1 zeres, and the shibolis was 2 zeres. Zeratayim. A zeres is half a amma. So if the kana was 1 zeres, the shibol altogether you had an amma and a half. Let's say that would be the whole size of the stalk. So a third of it was without any grain, and 2/3 of it was with grain. So that's a big chiddush of how plentiful, how fruitful was the stalks at the time of Yoel. That-
All this is talking about you, also about
The
the
Gemara-
people
yeah,
and
the
also
Gemara-
about the others.
And the Gemara's
All of this is
the Gemara's
the same
saying the whole Russia about the pasuk that the Mishnah brought down. As far as we're concerned, the Gemara doesn't discuss the Mishnah at all. The Mishnah says that the Rebbeinu says, the pasuk says, there's Yorah or Malkosh Barishon, that in the first month is rain. So he brought a pasuk that is rain the first month. He said, Mashruach Hamar Gashem, the same Talamot, even during Nisan. But the Gemara is actually the pasuk, nothing to do with the Mishnah, and it says the story of Yoel at the time that the first time is raining, the first rain, the Yorah, was also in Nisan. And it brings out of that the whole nace that happened, that it didn't rain at all until, and there was a locust, there also was a drought. And from the Aleph of Nisan, it rained. They planted for 3 days. They rained the second time on the 5th of Nisan. They were able ready to bring the Omer from the grown Tefuah that happened in 11 days later. Now the Gemara goes further, and the rest of the daf is all going to be Rav Nachman asking Rav Yitzchak questions. It's all Agadata, and it all came in Agav. It's all a bonus because the first Gemara was Amle Rav Nachman Rav Yitzchak, and he answered him in the name of Rav Yochanan, and that's going to be the pattern for about eight or so Gemaras. Amalei Rav Nachman Rav Yitzchak. Next Gemara. Ma'idach said, Yikar Hashem LeRav V'Gam Ba'al Ha'ara Shava Shanim. The pasuk over there is talking about Elisha and Yehoram. The king was Yehoram, and over there, Elisha told the woman who he was Machaya Mesim, her child. He said that he should go live someplace else because there's going to be a famine for 7 years. Rashi Yaga puts together this pasuk with the pasuk of Yoel, and he says that the above story about Yoel was the famine at the times of Yehoram. And the truth is, we don't know when Yoel lived, and the Mefarshim of all kinds of possibilities, and one of them does put together with our Gemara that the Yoel lived at the time of Yehoram, and this pasuk of the Rav, besides being a locust, there also was a famine that nothing grew, besides that the locust ate it up, which seems a little bit to be contradicting. If a locust ate it up means something did grow, but I don't know how to put the two things together. The Pashto of the Gemara doesn't have to be related to the Gemara before. We're talking now about a time when there was a Rav.
This is in
Again, Menachem Beis Perek Ches. So what I just asked really is a question of the Gemara before, regardless, that if there was a locust over there, so then you can't say that it rained the first time in Aleph Nisan. So the Gemara is not saying the Pasuk Pshat, the Gemara is saying a Drash. The Pasuk Pshat, the Pasuk doesn't say that it didn't rain until then. Maybe it rained the second time. It rained at first there was a crop and the locust ate it up, and then there was a big problem, nothing to eat. And then Hashem made that it should grow in Berisha, but that was the first time. But the Gemara did say that it didn't rain the whole 5 months. So that doesn't seem to fit with the Pasuk Pshat. Rashi does bring down this pasuk of Kara Hashem LaRav, also with the story of Yoel. And I'm not saying the pasuk doesn't say so. It's a pasuk in the time of Yehoram, and it could be that Yoel was the times of Yehoram because it doesn't say a timeline when Yoel lived. Anyway, what does the pasuk say over here? For our purposes, all we need is to know there was a famine for 7 years. And he asked him, Rav Nachman asked Rav Yitzchak, what did people eat for 7 years? How did their nation sustain for 7 years? There was nothing to eat. Again, Rav Yitzchak says in the name of Rav Yochanan, the first year they had left over that they had stored away in their houses, they had grain stored away. And the second year they ate while I was in the fields. Rashi says they had some aftergrowth that grew of itself, that it still did grow. On the third year they ate animals, the meat of animals, the kosher animals, but then they had no more kosher animals. In the fourth year they ate non-kosher animals. And then in the fifth year they ate rodents and all kinds of tamei such things. And then Shishis, in the sixth year they already ate the flesh of their sons and daughters, and Shvius, their own flesh. The kind Mashanema, Ish is a curse that a person is going to be such a big famine that they can eat their own arm. That's what happened in the 7 years of the famine. And over there at the end it says that famine, that's what Elisha told her to go away for 7 years because there's going to be such a famine that after that she came back. Next Gemara. Also, Rav Nachman Rav Yitzchak. Rav Nachman Rav Yitzchak. What it says in the pasuk, pasuk in Hosea, I think it says, and the pasuk Pshat says that amongst you is the Holy One, and I'm not going to come to a city. So the pasuk Pshat means I'm not going to come to a different city. That Hashem is within you, Am Yisrael. I'm going to come only to you. I'm not going to come to other cities. But the Gemara is darshaning that Ir means Yerushalayim. So then the pasuk is a contradiction. The Holy One is amongst you. I'm not going to come to Yerushalayim. That doesn't make sense. Because the Holy One is within you. I'm not going to come into the city. On the contrary, that's the reason to come to the city. Hashem will come to Yerushalayim because that's where the holiness is supposed to be. Amalei. So Rabbi Yitzchak told Rav Nachman, Hachiyam Rabbi Yochanan, again, Rabbi Yitzchak named Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, La'aved Yerushalayim Shal Ma'ala, Ad Shaved Yerushalayim Shal Ma'ala. Here the Gemara tells us it's such a thing called Yerushalayim Shal Ma'ala. There's a spiritual Yerushalayim. a spiritual Yerushalayim. And Hashem says, I'm not going to come to the spiritual Yerushalayim until I come to the physical Yerushalayim in this world. And that's what it means, the Kibbutz HaKadosh. And therefore, Lo Avo Be'ir of Yerushalayim Shalmala. I'm not going to come to the city of Yerushalayim Shalmala until the Kibbutz HaKadosh. Until the Holy One Hashem is within you, Yerushalayim Shalmata, I'm not going to come to Yerushalayim Shalmala. The Gemara Sakashi, is there such a thing? Yerushalayim Shalmala, is there such a thing? And yes, there is. The Chsiv, Yerushalayim of New York, Yerushalayim built up like a city which is connected to it. So what does that mean? Which city is connected to Yerushalayim? So the Pasuk Pshat the Mepharshim say it's like the suburbs, all the cities that are around it. But the Gemara is saying it has a sister city. It has a sister city that is connected to. Which city is Yerushalayim connected to? Something similar to it. Another Yerushalayim. Where's that? Yerushalayim Shalmala. The next Gemara, 5 lines in the bottom. This I think is the 4th Gemara of Rav Nachman Rav Yitzchak. Rav Nachman Rav Yitzchak. That's the whole subject over here.
I guess the Gemara does it from memory to remember.
I don't know. That's a good place to put it. All of the members of an Amora together to put them all to organize all the statements of Rav Nachman Rav Yitzchak. And also, I think the answer is always going to be almost all of them is the name of Rav Yochanan. That's talking about how ridiculous Avodah Zarah is, and it says in the Pasuk Pshat, in one thing they're a bar and exil, in one thing they're foolish, they're a futile musar. It's a piece of wood. So the Pasuk Pshat is that it's a piece of wood, it's Avodah Zarah, and therefore it's a foolish thing what people are doing, that they are being rebuked, and it's not working because it's a piece of wood. A piece of wood. What are people doing about the Zarah for? But the Gemara has a drasha that says a little different. The pasuk means Achazi Shem Va'eres Rishaim Begehinnom. Thank you. There's one thing Uba'achas. There's one thing, but the Gemara doesn't darshan that Yivaru means lashon of bar. Bar or ksil means foolishness. They say Yivaru means they're going to be burnt. There's one thing that causes the Rishon, like a main issue that causes the Rishon to burn again. Mahi Avodah Zarah. And how do you know it's Avodah Zarah? So I thought the Pashut over there is talking about Avodah Zarah, but the Rashi says you might have learned this pasuk. Eitzu just means that they're like a piece of wood, they're like a klutz, that they don't think they are tumim, they don't accept the Musa. But the Gemara is going to say, I'll prove to you that it's Avodah Zarah with Gzera Shava. Ksiv Hacha Musa Avolam Eitzu. So it says the word Hevel. And another place where it says the word Hevel, that it means, and it's referring to Avodah Zarah. The Avodah Zarah is nonsense. It's a fake. So from here, the Gemara learns a drasha that it means Avodah Zarah. So what does the pasuk mean? It was one thing is going to cause them to go to burn in Gehenna. That's going to be the Avodah Zarah. That the main thing that gets the Rishon to go to Gehenna is because of Avodah Zarah. The next drasha. My nation did 2 bad things. Over there it says 2 bad things that Am Yisrael did, and the Kasha is Tartan with the only 2 bad things. Tartan with the only 2 bad things that they did. So there's a question in the Gersa here, 24. Some of the Gersa 22. It seems that everybody holds it all together. They were 24, and the Kasha the Gemara is asking is why does they did 2 bad things? They did 24 bad things. 22 more. And the pasuk only talks about 2 bad things. But the Gemara doesn't tell you at all what are the 24 things that they did wrong. Which 24 things? So there are a couple of shatim in the Rishonim. Some say it means they transgress everything it says in the 24 books of the Tanakh. Some say that there's a pasuk in Yecheskel that says over there 24 averos, and they bring where the pasuk is. Rashi says it's in the Yecheskel. Yecheskel Perikov base, and you look over there, you'll see 24 averos. Rabbeinu Hananel brings down some other shatim that it says. In the pasuk alone, this pasuk alone, if you look at it in Kishtayim Rosh Asami, you look over there, it can say 24, and there are another pshatim that says in Yerushalmi, they bring down another thing about a list of averos that Am Yisrael did. It doesn't say clearly in the Gemara what the 24 are. For our purposes, we can take Rashi's 2 pshatim. Either it means on the bottom line of Rashi, let's jump a second. Rashi brings down that it means either in Yecheskel Perek 22 it says Parashas HaTishbot. Over there it says 24 averos, and also it can mean the 24 books of the Tanakh. So that's why they did 2 bad things. They did 24 bad things. Once again, the name of Yochanan, Achasti, the Dalam Beis, Shkula Kishnayim. There's one that's equal to 2. There's one Avera, like a 2 and 1 Avera. And what is that? Ma'ani Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah is 2 and 1. Why? There are many Averas, but there's one Avera that's considered 2 and 1. What is that? דכסיב כי שתיים ורוס עשה מי, או שיעזבו מקור מים חיים, לחסוך להם בראש, בראש נשברים, ואשר לא יכילו המים. That my nation did to me two evils. That's what we're talking about. Me, they left the source of fresh water to carve out for themselves boros, broken boros that can't contain the water. So the Pashto of the Gemara, I think, is to say that there's two things that are wrong. If somebody would leave a good source of water and go to another good source of water, maybe that's Avera in itself, that's being disloyal to the first, but we can understand him. Or if he would leave a broken bore to go to a broken bore, but if he leaves a bore, a be'er of a Makor Mayim Chayim to go to a bore and Ishborim, so he's leaving everything and going to nothing, so that's considered two bad things. So that's the point of Avodah Zarah, that they left Hashem, which is a source of all good, and they went to Avodah Zarah, which is worth nothing. And that's, I think it's Pashut Pshat in the two things, in the two and one. And the Gemara continues to say how they were over Avodah Zarah, that they didn't leave their Avodah Zarah even if it was worthless. So it means there's a loyalty that a person is supposed to have, and they didn't have that. Am Yisrael didn't even have the loyalty that Avdei Avodah Zarah have. And the Avdei Avodah Zarah, the Avodah is worth nothing. And Hashem was doing everything for them. They left Hashem. So those are the two bad things, that they forsook Hashem, who is giving them everything. That's a bunch of Pshat what the 24 might have been. That the Mepharshim will talk about what the 24 might have been. But there's one Avera. Why is it called two? Because it's two and one. There's one Avera which is worth two. Two bad things about it. That's the one Avera. That's the point that Hashem is talking about. That they did Avodah Zarah, which they left. They did Avodah Zarah by leaving Hashem, who was giving them everything, and they were disloyal, and also the fact they went to something which has nothing. And that Gemara brings the story of the Avodah Zarah that they were loyal, even though the Avodah Zarah didn't do anything for them. It says by the Avodah Zarah, go to pass through the islands of the Kittim and look and see. The Kedar Shalchuv is one remote and sent to Kedar and contemplate. Did the nation switch their God and they're not a God? And my nation switched their glory for something which is doesn't do anything good and helpless. It doesn't help anything. So what is this thing about the Kittim and the Kedar? So the Gemara is going to say both of them over the Avodah Zarah, and they didn't serve the same Avodah Zarah. They served the opposite Avodah Zarahs, and one was obviously stronger than the other, or each one could overpower the other one, and they still didn't forsake the Avodah Zarah. They were loyal to the Avodah Zarah, even though they saw that it's futile, doesn't do anything. The Gemara says here, Tana, we learned in the Brisa, scroll up a little bit, Tana, Kusim of the Laish. The Kusim, they serve the fire. Kedarim of the Lamayim. The Kedar, they serve the water. They have Avodah Zarah, they worship the fire, they worship the water. That those who serve the fire, they know that the water can extinguish it, so they should have humbled, they should have given in, and they should have gone on to the water. You can also say the other way. Rabbi Miller used to say the other way also. The water also gets boiled up and evaporated by the fire also. The Gemara doesn't say that part, but that Avodah Zarah, you see that there's limited strength, but still, lo miru Elohim. They didn't switch their God. They were loyal to that God, even they saw that it's futile.
I don't know if that's considered a Maila. The Gemara's saying there's a Maila. You should learn from them. They're silly, they're stupid, foolish.
Mm-hmm.
No, because it could be because they get from the mind age.
Whatever they do, they get something. And my nation, they switched their glory for nothing. So that seems what the Gemara was saying before, that there's an affair that's called two and one, and that's going from Hashem to Avodah Zarah. That itself is two bad things. They left the source of all good and they went to something to nothing. Next Gemara, also Rav Nachman to Rav Yitzchak. That's the whole subject over here. Rav Nachman to Rav Yitzchak. Another question, but it says in the pasuk, Vayehi Kasher Zaken Shmuel. That says when Shmuel got old. And the question is, Rav Nachman asked Rav Yitzchak, Shmuel never got old. Misiv Shmuel Kol Yihad. Shmuel got so old, he never was old. But Bar Nun Beis Haba, he only was 52 when he died. Damamar Meis Nun Beis Shana Zeh Misal Shal Shmuel. I must say, if somebody dies at age 52, it's similar to the death of Shmuel. The Gemara is talking about different ages of. If it's considered a punishment, Misa B'dei Shammai and Kores, and it says Kores is less than 60, but it says there's an exception. 52 is considered the death of Shmuel, and he wasn't Chayv Kores. He died at 52, even though he was not Chayv Kores. So that's an age that 52 is considered the death of Shmuel Aramasi. Anyway, what do you see? That Shmuel died at 52. The Gemara doesn't say how we know. It says Amamar, Rashi, and Taisus, they make the Cheshbonos. But the question is, how could it say in the pasuk that Shmuel became old? He didn't become old. He never became old. He died at 52. At the young age of 52. Amalei. So that he aged. Hashem made that he should age, even though Taka on the calendar he was 52, but he really aged. The Chsiv. Now the Gemara is going to say, why did Shmuel age? Why did Hashem make that Shmuel should age? It says, Hashem said that I regret that I made Shaul to be the king after he didn't listen to the word of Hashem over there by Agag with Amalek. So Hashem said, I regret that I made him king. And Hashem wanted to kill him. Hashem wanted that Shaul should die. Shmuel was davening and he said that you, Hashem, you equated me to Moshe and Aaron. Moshe Aaron the pasuk can tell him it equates Moshe and Aaron to Shmuel. That Moshe and Aaron are the servants of Hashem, and Shmuel are amongst those who call out to Hashem. So put him on the same level, Moshe, Aaron, and Shmuel. And then he's asking in that merit, if the Gemara put the pasuk earlier to say how great Shmuel is. No, we're here now. This is it. He just came in now. Shmuel's bringing him in. Shmuel's bringing in Moshe and Aaron to the tefillah that's asking Hashem. Hashem said that Shaul's time to die because he didn't act the king the way I want him to be. And then Shmuel's asking Hashem that Moshe and Aaron you equated me to Moshe and Aaron. If so, I'm asking that I should be on the same level. And just like Moshe and Aaron, that whatever they created didn't get nullified, didn't wither out, didn't nullify in their lifetime. And Rashi says it means Yeshua, that Yeshua was the Talmud of Moshe and Aaron, and he outlived them. So Shmuel asked that my creation, which means that he's the one who anointed Shaul, should not die and be batel in my lifetime. So he was asking that since I'm still living, Shmuel, so Shaul should have died in my lifetime. So really, Shaul should have died, and Shmuel should have not died. But now that Shmuel said, I'm asking that Shaul should not die in my lifetime, so now the question is, maybe Shmuel has to die. So now the Gemara says all of the possibilities. Hashem said, what should I do? As if to say Hashem is calculating, what should I do? Shaul, if Shaul should die the way that Hashem said really deserves to die, Shmuel doesn't let. Shmuel is davening that he shouldn't die. Shmuel, so understood that maybe Shmuel should die when he's young, in order that Shaul should die after him. People are going to be rumoring about him, about Shmuel, that he died young. Why did he die young? It must be that he has Averis. Now that Adam should die. And it should be the way Shmuel asked that Shaul should continue. That can't be. It's ready the time for David to become king. And one kingdom does not touch the other kingdom, even a hair's breadth. So it means that there's other cheshbonos why Shaul has to stop his kingship. Because David is upcoming. So what's the, how, so to speak, is Hashem going to solve the problem of Shaul has to die? Shaul cannot die in Shmuel's lifetime, and Shaul has to die because David's kingdom is starting. So Hashem said, I'm going to make that Shmuel should become aged, and then he could die. So it's not going. No one's going to have any question why did he die early, because he aged, and even though he aged before his time, that's not that. No one's going to say it's because of an avera. If a person would have had an avera, then he would have died young. But the fact that he died old, even though it wasn't on the calendar, it wasn't old, but it was, he died as an old man. I'm going to make old age come upon him quickly. And now the Gemara has a drasha to say that Shaul did live a little bit longer, because since Shmuel had to die first, so that also was a couple of months that Shaul's kingdom was extended past when he should have lived. It wasn't going to come to the time when David was supposed to become king, that we said that so Shaul did die before David was supposed to take over. But he did live a bit longer than after the decree would have been that his kingdom should have been shortened. And that didn't happen because of Shmuel's tefillah. That's what the Gemara says now. It says in the pasuk, V'Shaul Yoshe b'Giva v'tachas Eishel b'Ramah. It says Shaul was sitting in Giva under the tree Eishel in Ramah. So the pasuk shot is that Giva and Ramah is two different places. In the same place. Giva and Ramah is in the same place. One is like a bigger town, and one is a small part in the big town. But now the Gemara says no, two different cities. Giva and Ramah is two different places. The Chimani and Giva Eishel Ramah. Rashi says Giva is in Binyamin, Ramah is in Ephraim, so they're not the same place. Ella Lama Lacha Nigam L'Shol She'Eishel b'Giva. The answer is who caused that Shaul should live as be king and Giva for 2.5 years? The answer is the tefillah of Shmuel or Masi. that because Shmuel davened that Shaul should not daven in his lifetime, should not die in Shmuel's lifetime. So that extended Shaul's lifetime a little bit. I think this is what Rashi says. I didn't understand the Gemara, but what I said now, I think Rashi says that his life was extended a little bit more than it should have been. Because of his sin, he should have had a shortened kingship. But Shmuel extended it a little bit, not very long into David's time, but longer than it would have been. And Rashi says that Cheshvan about 8 months, that Shaul died 8 months after Shmuel died. But the point is that without Shmuel's tefillah, then Shmuel would have lived and Shaul would have died, maybe right away. The fact that Shmuel had to die first, that extended Shmuel's kingdom a little bit. The Master Kasha, is one person pushed away because of another person. Rashi says it comes out that why did Shmuel die? If you make the whole calculation, why did Shmuel die? Because it was David's turn to become king. David had to become king, and therefore Shaul had to die. And in order for Shaul to die, Shmuel had to die. So that means that Shmuel died on account of David. Yes, in that which it says, therefore I killed the Nevi'im. It seems over here maybe talking about, I'm not sure if the Gemara means this false Nevi'im or the true Nevi'im, but the Gemara seems to be going about even the true Nevi'im over here. I killed them be'imrei fi with the word of my mouth. The word is darshaning the masem lo namar ela be'imrei fi. Not that I killed them because of their actions. They didn't do anything bad to deserve to be killed. But why did I kill them? Because imrei fi, because of the nevuah. Alma mitchi gava mikami gava. A man is pushed away because of another man. Because of the nevuah was that David is supposed to become the king. That's why Shmuel had to die. So those are all Gemaras about Rav Nachman and Rav Yitzchak. And the Gemara continues more stories. Till now it was always Rav Nachman asking Rav Yitzchak a question, and Rav Yitzchak answered in the name of Rav Yochanan. Here is not this. The scenario is not that Rav Nachman is asking a question, but here was a story of Nachman Rav Yitzchak of Yasi Busadasa. Rav Nachman and Rav Yitzchak were sitting by a Suda, by a meal. Amalei Rav Nachman and Rav Yitzchak Lema Mandalsa. He didn't ask any kasha. He just said that Rav Yitzchak should say something. He told them, say it to Torah. So first he didn't, even though it's also is halacha, it's also in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, but that's not what he meant to say. He didn't mean to say halacha. He meant to say, I can't tell you now because Rabbi Yochanan said you're not supposed to talk during a meal because maybe the kana, the trachea, is going to precede the food pipe. How do you say the food pipe?
No, it's a windpipe.
The trachea and the
esophagus.
The esophagus. Thank you. So the food is supposed to go down the esophagus, and the air is supposed to go through the trachea. And if a person is talking while he's eating, so the epiglottis, that's the cover on top of the trachea, might open up in a way that he's talking because he's talking, and the food might go down the windpipe. So don't talk while you're eating. That causes a person to be a sakana. So I can't talk now. We're eating, I can't talk. This is a question, or it's wrong that people do talk while they eat. You're not supposed to talk while you eat. It's dangerous. It's also brought down in Shulchan Aruch. So I did hear that there are those that once the meal starts, like the main course, so people don't talk. Has anybody ever seen that? That people stop talking when they're having the main course. When they're just eating, they didn't start the main official formal meal yet. So then they're sitting around the table drinking wine, things like that. But once they start eating the meal, so then it's supposed to be quiet.
Also, past the time of the Gemara, they ate lying down.
Uh-huh.
I heard that also.
Uh-huh.
I was all the Medaktikim, they try to talk between courses.
Between courses, that's good. That'll be close. Between courses will be good. But during the course, when leaving the course, then there's no talking. And if
They say
once Dr. Klein is saying that it was only a problem more when they were reclining. Even though when you recline on the left, then it will be good, like we do it by Pesach. So how come that's not enough of an eitzah to recline on the left? Still not an eitzah.
Reb Chayak being down in the Sefer, that's also besides this problem, another problem. People talk, so they chew less. It's very important to chew.
But that's not a sakana. That the Gemara says because it's
no,
sakana.
You're not saying.
Yeah, it's another good reason. Another valuable thing to be able to chew enough and get the full benefit out of the food. Okay, but anyways, I can't.
I'm assuming that the call to accompany a meal with Torah means that when one's not eating.
Right, it would mean the Torah that he's talking would be in between the courses, like Abraham says, something like that.
I have one more nakuda, which might be correct. I want to hear if the Rav agrees. That it says in Masichin, Sicha is a conversation. If someone wants to say over a speech, that's he's not discussing. The problem is discussing, and one person's going to be they're going to be answering each other. If one's saying the drasha, it's not a problem.
Okay, maybe. Then if someone is officially speaking, no one's supposed to interrupt him. Sometimes when the speech is that people also chime in. That's also not good. But if it's officially no one's supposed to talk, maybe that would be an answer that the person who's speaking is not eating and people that are eating are just listening. Maybe. Amalei. So Basa the sword. So he didn't talk. He didn't tell him anything. Basa the sword after the meal. Amalei Yachiyam Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yitzchak again, always quoting Rabbi Yochanan. He told him about Torah, Yaakov Avinu Lomes, that Yaakov Avinu never died. He lives on. He never died. So that was really surprising, and I could just imagine that if someone would have heard that during the meal, he might have choked on what he was eating. Also, the surprise of what he's heard, and the Gemara doesn't say at all why he told him Nafkidis Dvar Torah. It doesn't say which parsha it was. I don't know, but he told him Yaakov Avinu Lomes. That was the Dvar Torah in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Amalei. So if Nachman said it's possible he didn't die, it says praise that he died. Did they eulogize him for nothing? Did they embalm him for nothing? Did they bury him for nothing? He says openly that they eulogized him and they embalmed him and they buried him. Amalei, what should I do? It's a pasuk. Mikrani Dorish is not a perish pasuk, but it's a drasha. I would say that drasha and pshat are two different things. And Pshat died, but the drasha didn't die. And what does it mean? The drasha, I would think, that doesn't mean the physical point. I'm telling you the drasha. And if it's drasha, then you can't ask conscious that physically died. He physically died. But the Rashi says a little different. Rashi says that he didn't die, and they thought that he died. Therefore, they eulogized him, and they embalmed him, and they buried him. So I find that difficult that they embalmed him. Embalming, you could say that they thought he died, and they eulogized him, but they thought they died and they embalmed him. Embalming is a procedure that a live person wouldn't be able to tolerate. That he got whatever they do in the embalming, there are all kinds of.
What's the answer?
Yeah, so I think the Pshat, I think what the Gemara means is as Drash and Pshat, Mikrani Dorish. I'm not telling you Pshat, I'm telling you Drash. Mikrani Dorish. And when it's Drasha, so don't take it literally. I'm telling you something, there's a certain aspect, maybe, however it has to be translated, that means he didn't die. There's an aspect that means that he didn't die, but it doesn't mean physically he didn't die. That's my own understanding. I'm not sure. Yes, please.
Embalming is also another problem. Nivelames, no?
That's a different question. That not the subject. That means he died, and the Gemara says that's maybe one of the reasons that the lower Shusa shall mokum, that maybe Yosef was punished for that, but that's a different issue. Shenema v'atal tirav di Yaakov nama adinai b'al techas Yisrael ki enlimo she'achom yerachok ba'az darachom ye'erev yom. This is the person that we're going to learn out that Yaakov Avinu Lomes. Before he just said so, he didn't prove it. Now he's proving it from the Drash. And you do not fear my servant Yaakov, says Hashem, and do not be broken, Yisrael, because I'm saving you from distance, from far away, and your children, your seed, from the land of their captivity. So it talks about you, Yaakov. The most take it literally. You, my servant Yaakov means the person Yaakov. And he said, I'm going to save you and your children from their land of captivity. Makish Hul is ours. So the person compares it, puts it in one breath, you and your children. So it's comparing him to his children. When his children are going to come back, they're going to come back alive. Mazdar b'chaim, afu b'chaim. Just like when his children come back from the land of captivity. Rashi says that Shevyam doesn't talk about bringing out the graves. It means that from their captivity. Captivity means people. People are captives, not dead. So too, Yaakov is also going to come back the same way his children come back. Also going to come back alive. And from there, the Gemara dashens that he never died. Since he says he's going to come back alive, that means he never died. I would think maybe not. Maybe that means he's going to have Chiyas HaMesim. The Gemara doesn't consider that. If he's going to come back alive, means he never died. The next Gemara, another Gemara about Rabbi Yitzchak and Rav Nachman. I'm Rabbi Yitzchak. Kalom is Rachav Miyad Nikri. Rachav was such a beautiful woman. Rachav, by the times of Yeshua, she was the one who saved, who took the two spies, and then she had the red string outside, and that was a symbol that she should be saved, and her whole family was saved. At the end, she was taken out and not killed with the rest of Yericho. The Medrash says, the Gemara says that Yeshua married her eventually. But anyway, it says that Rachav was so beautiful. Rabbi Yitzchak said whoever would say Rachav's name, Rachav, he would become a Balkari. He would have a mission from the Taiva because she was so beautiful. Amalei Rav Nachman, and Rav Nachman said, Rav Nachman said that I said the name and nothing happened. I don't get affected by the fact that I'm saying Rachav. I mean, if somebody knows her, and says the name, he recalls her, so then that would cause him an omission, but not that just someone says the name. It's not something like that. Just saying the name, I didn't mean that. The Gemara says one more story about Rav Nachman and Rav Yitzchak. Have a mifteri when they were part of each other, when they would leave each other. Amalei levorachim. Rav Nachman would say to Rav Yitzchak, he asked him for a bracha. Give me a bracha.
Famous song.
Amalei. So Rav Yitzchak said to Rav Nachman, Em shalach hamashal amad davodam. I'll tell you a mashal, a parable. La'adam shayholech b'midbar b'yarav b'oyev etzam. A person was going in the desert and he was hungry and tired and thirsty. And he found a tree that had sweet fruit, and it had a good shade, beautiful shade, and it had a stream of water passing under it, which means all three problems were solved. He had food to eat, and he had a place to rest. He was tired, he had a place to rest under the shade, and he had water to drink. So he ate from its fruit, and he drank its water, and he sat in its shade. When he was ready to leave, he said to the tree, with what can I bless you? If I should bless you, you should have sweet fruit. You have already sweet fruit. Should I bless you, you should have a beautiful shade. You have already a beautiful shade. Should I bless you, you should have a stream of water passing beneath you. You have already a stream of water passing beneath you. Again, I didn't, let me just take a second to, everyone knows the end of the story already, but let me just put it on the screen for a second. It's pretty close. Let's see if I can do that bigger. That all your fruit should be like you. That your the trees that they're going to plant from you should also be as successful of you. All the saplings that they're going to plant, not your fruit, but your saplings. The saplings that they plant from you to make new trees should be the same as you. That was the mashal. Now goes the nimshal. Afata, you too, of Nachman. Why should I bless you? In the Torah, Arei Torah. In Ba'osha, Arei Osha. In B'banim, Arei Banim. You have Torah, you have wealth, you have children, everything else, everything a person could want. So what should I bless you with? Ali Ratzon Sheyud said, bless you that your offspring should be like you.
This they would do every time. This is a one-time story.
Yeah, the Gemara says Kevin Miftarim, but maybe it sounds like a one-time thing. This sounds like a one-time thing. Maybe. Before the Lashon said Kevin Miftari, the word sounds a little bit like when they would part. It doesn't say when they parted. Kevin Miftari. So maybe it was a one-time thing.
Well, maybe
so
once
this is.
They left every year for Yom Nisan.
And they would say the whole Shaka Bataria. He could have said the mashal only one time. He wasn't sure. It says, after that, he just said that, maybe. Okay, Yashikov. So today was all Agadata, and the Mishnah talked about when do you stop saying the Saint Talamota, and the Gemara says maybe it means Mashruach Hamor Goshem also, because you're not going to say the Saint Talamota and stop saying Mashruach Hamor Goshem. So we have here Shita says till after Pesach, but May says till after Nisan. He put the pasuk Yor Malkosh Berishon. The Gemara mentioned that Yitzchak of Nachman that Manasseh of Yitzchak about this pasuk, and he said that in the times of Yoel it happened that the first rain fell in Nisan. The story about how it grew in 11 days. After that, the Gemara says also the Darshans pasuk of Azar Medim Berini Yitzchak after that generation. We have many more stories about them. One was about the Sheva Shanim. What did they eat during the fast, during the famine in times of Yehoram? So it said about the 7 stages of more and more famine, about till they came to eat their own flesh. After that, the Gemara brought about Rav Nachman Yitzchak B'kir B'chakodesh, a such thing about Yerushalayim Shalmala. Yeshcha B'lo Yachtav, and Hashem says he's not going to come to Yerushalayim Shalmala until Yerushalayim Shalmata. Next one was about Achaz Yivru V'Yachsalu, that one thing causes the Rishonim to go to Gehenna, and that is the Avodah Zarah, Hevel, that Avodah Zarah causes them to go to Gehenna. The pasuk says Shtayim Rosa Sami, and why is it only 2? There are many more various, but this is the 2-in-1 that the Gemara says is Avodah Zarah. They leave Hashem, which has Mukar Ma'im Chaim, wisdom Mukar Ma'im Chaim, and they go to do Boros Nishborim. After that, it says Shmuel was old. Was Shmuel ever old? The Gemara says yes, he aged, even though he's only 52, but he aged. And the reason why he aged is because he asked that Shaul should not die in his lifetime, so Hashem made that Shmuel should die, but he didn't want him to die young because that would cause a rumor that he deserved to die young. So Hashem made that he should age before his time. And the Gemara does say something about Shaul's Malchus being extended a little bit because of Shmuel's tefillah. And then the Gemara brought the story about Yaakov Avinu Lameis. First of all, in Masichem Besuda, we need a heter, or no heter, that's mimakbid, not to talk during a meal. And of course, there is talking sometimes, like between courses. That's true. But during the eating, there shouldn't be any talking. And Yaakov Avinu Lo Meisi told him afterwards, and even though the pasuk says openly that Saftu Safdaya, Chantu Chantaya, Kavru Kavraya, Taisus points out that it doesn't say Vayamas, it just says Vayigba, it doesn't say Vayamas. But the Gemara says, he dashes the pasuk, it says, Altiwa Avdi Yaakov, Ani Moshiach, Moshiachov, Zaracha, that also he's going to be saved, come back and see the Yeshua the same way that his children, that they're alive, he also never died. Next thing was that Yitzchak said, but only if he knows her. And the last thing was the about the bracha that Rav Nachman asked Yitzchak for a bracha. He told him the mashal about that you have good fruit and you have good shade and you have water running under you. So a person who has Torah and Osher and Banim, what could he have? That his children should be successful just like him. Yashikov, everybody. We'll be back in a few minutes with Navi on Tehillim. Today's Tehillim. Yashikov, everybody. Thank you. He became Balkari.